In a small town surrounded by rolling hills, there lived a boy named Arav. He was not the strongest nor the smartest, but he was known for one thing, his stubbornness. If he decided something, no one could change his mind. His parents, teachers, and even his friends often got frustrated with his refusal to listen. "Why don't you ever accept advice?" his father would ask, shaking his head in frustration. "Because I believe in myself," Arav would reply, his eyes burning with determination. Most people saw his stubbornness as arrogance, but deep inside, it was something else. An unshakable fire that refused to die. Arav's greatest dream was to become a football player. Every morning before the sun rose, he would tie his worn-out shoes, run to the old field, and practice alone. His feet would slip in the muddy grass. His hands would shake from exhaustion, but he never stopped. His father, however, had different dreams for him. "Football won't feed you, Arav. Focus on your studies." His classmates laughed at him. "You? A footballer? Keep dreaming." Even his coach at school sighed and said, "Arav, you don't have the talent. Maybe try something else?" Each word felt like a knife in his heart, but Arav clenched his fists and whispered to himself, "I will prove them wrong." One day, a prestigious football academy announced trials in the nearby city. It was a golden opportunity. Arav begged his father to let him go. His father sighed, staring at his son's desperate eyes, and finally said, "Oh, but don't come back crying." With excitement pounding in his chest, Arav traveled to the city. But when he arrived, he saw hundreds of boys, tall, strong, confident. Some had professional gear, coaches by their side. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. The trials began. Arav gave it everything he had. He ran, he kicked, he played with all his heart. But when the final list was announced, his name wasn't there. The rejection hit him like a storm. He felt his legs weaken, his throat tighten. As he turned to leave, he overheard a few boys snickering. Did he really think he stood a chance? His hands curled into fists. He wanted to scream, to cry, but instead, he walked away in silence. That night, he stared at the ceiling, his heart heavy with the weight of failure. A single thought echoed in his mind. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe they were right. The next morning, Arav stood up, wiped his tears, and made a decision. I will not quit. I will become better. He trained harder than ever before. When others rested, he practiced. When others mocked him, he focused. He watched football videos, studied techniques, and repeated drills until his body ached. Months later, another selection was announced, a bigger, tougher competition. This time, his father didn't stop him. At the trials, Arav played as if his life depended on it. Every kick, every sprint, every move, he gave it his all. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His legs burned with exhaustion, but he didn't stop. When the results were announced, his hands trembled. His heart pounded. And then, his name was on the list. Tears filled his eyes. This time, they weren't from pain, but from pure joy. Years passed, and Arav's name became known in the football world. He played harder, trained smarter, and eventually became a professional footballer. The same people who doubted him now watched his matches with pride. His father, once skeptical, now sat in the front row, clapping for his son. His classmates who had laughed at him now said, "We always knew he would make it." One day after a big match, a young boy approached him and asked, "Arav Baya, how did you do it?" Arav smiled, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, and said, "People called me stubborn, but sometimes stubbornness is just another word for never giving up. Never let anyone tell you that you can't achieve your dreams. Believe in yourself, work harder than anyone else, and prove them wrong."